Let's turn to Genesis chapter 29. You reap what you sow. You know, this is a great way to start it because I'm really going to ask them what they did today because something's reaping here. Genesis 29. Sounds like a phrase you've heard many times. You reap what you sow. But is it, what does it really mean and how does it apply to tonight's study? Well, I have this illustration for you. It's entitled, You Reap What You Sow. Late one summer evening in Broken Bow, Nebraska, a weary truck driver pulled his rig into an all-night truck stop. The waitress had just served him when three tough-looking, leather-jacketed motorcyclists of the Hell Angels type decided to give him a hard time. So you guys got the picture. Truck driver's tired, sitting down, he's eating. These three bikers come in. Not only did they verbally abuse him, one grabbed the hamburger off his plate, another took a handful of his fries, and the third picked up his coffee and began to drink it. So messed up. How would you respond? Now remember, these are three rough-looking people. Well, this trucker did not respond as one might expect. Instead, he calmly rose, picked up his check, walked to the front of the room, put the check and his money on the cash register, and went out the door. It's like, man, what a great example, huh? Then the waitress followed him to put the money in the till and stood watching at the door as the big truck drove away into the night. You think you guys could do that? Well, the story's not done yet. When she returned, one of the bikers said to her, "Well, he's not much of a man, is he?" She replied, "I don't know about that, but he sure ain't much of a truck driver. He just ran over three motorcycles on his way out of the parking lot." So, you reap what you sow, huh? Well, let's apply that to Jacob. Think about this. As we be going through the life of Jacob, the last few chapters, it seems like that Jacob did some devious things. Jacob, with the help of his mother, actually his mother was directing the whole thing. They deceived his father. He deceived his father and stole an inheritance from his brother. And then he fled from his home. And actually, here's part of the reaping. He had to leave his home because of what he did. Because he's reaping what he had sown. He then meets God in the desert. So you think after doing something horrific, God meets him in the desert. Because the character that he was displaying, his name, which again we'll probably understand why God changes it later, this is not the character that God wanted in this man that he was going to use. So he meets him in the desert, and we know from that point that Jacob has been changed. But the lesson's not done. He's not finishing reaping what he's sown. Because remember, he's going to his uncle Laban's place to stay with him for quite a long while. And he will learn the harsh lesson from what he's sown. When he's done to his father what he's done to his brother, he's going to reap almost the same thing from a close relative. He's going to experience what it means to be deceived. Well, and he's going to, something that was rightfully his was taken away from him by his own uncle. So we see that definitely we reap what we sow. And sometimes we wonder, as we look at the world, how come the wicked people of the world are not reaping? They will one day if they don't reap now. But in this case, we see Jacob is a man that God is going to use, that he's already working through this family. And because God loves him, he's going to correct him. But also many times our actions, they do have results. They're not results, but they have consequences. That's the word I'm looking for. So every time we do something, the consequences can be for good or for bad. So let's go ahead and turn to Genesis chapter 29, and I want to look at verses 1 through 4 to begin. Then Jacob continued on his journey. Remember, he met God in the desert. So after meeting God, he continues on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the field with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it because the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherd, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," replied. So he's traveling. Remember, it's a couple days. It's a long distance to get to where he's going. And there's no road maps in those days. There's no road signs. So he has to, wherever he meets people, he's saying, where are you from? Really what he's saying, where am I? Because, they're in the middle of nowhere. They're shepherds, but they have to be somewhere that's fairly close. So he doesn't know where he's at, and they say, we're from Haran. That's where Abraham's from, and that's where Abraham's brother is, and that's where Laban lives. So he's in the right place. So when he heard these words, we're from Haran, it must have been music to his ears to realize that I've been traveling all this time, not sure if I'm going in the right direction, but I've arrived at the destination that I'm looking for. Not only to be in the right place, but for the trip to end, because I'm sure, traveling takes a toll on you. So Jacob comes to the right place at the right time by God's grace, because God is guiding him. By his mercy, he leads him we're going to find out, he leads him to the right field, to the right well, at the right time when Laban's daughter would arrive. We've seen this over and over in the Bible. It's like perfect timing. If it had been an hour later, she wouldn't have been there. So let's go ahead and look at verses 5 through 8. He said to them, do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson? Yes, we know him, they answered. Then Jacob asked them, is he well? Yes, he is, they said. And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. Look, he said, the son is... Now listen to how it almost goes in it too quickly. So let me read it again. So Jacob asked them, is he well? Yes, he is, they said. And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. Now verse 7, it seems like it takes a total different direction. As soon as he says, here she comes, Jacob says, look, the sun is still high. Is it not time for the flocks to be gathered, water the sheep, and take them back to the pasture? What do you think he's saying there? Well, first of all, he asked, do you know Laban? He knows her from Haran. Do you know Laban? He doesn't even know if he's still alive. Think about that. He doesn't even know if his uncle's still alive. Yeah, we know him. As a matter of fact, here comes his daughter because she attends his sheep. And upon seeing them, Jacob suggests, he sees her, and he says, I think it's time for you guys to leave. Was it because she was beautiful? And here's what I found interesting too. He says, we cannot water the flock until everyone's flock is here. Here's what they respond. Verse 8, we can't, they replied, until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep. So they're saying, we can't water our sheep. We can't leave like you're asking us to. Because we know you have good reasons for asking us to leave. But we have to wait till all the shepherds get here so that we can move it together, I suppose. You think they're saying we can't move it by ourselves? Could it be that they were all gathering and waiting upon this shepherdess to show up? This beautiful... It says in Genesis 29:17, it says she was lovely in form and beautiful. We can't move it to the other shepherdess. He should have said that. Get here. Or did they need the help? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they needed the help because it said it was a large stone, right, over the well. Let's find out. The next verse, 9. While he was still talking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was shepherdess. Listen to verse 10. When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and a son of Rebekah. So she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home, and there Jacob told him all these things. Well, there's your answer. Jacob moved the stone by himself, so it was a bogus excuse. They're like, we're waiting because we need help. And I think Jacob's probably looking at the stone thinking, it's not that big. But when he saw her coming, he's like, you guys can go now. Because she's related to my family. That's why he wanted to talk to her. Initially, after that, then he kisses her. It's like, man, this guy is just kind of straightforward, isn't he? But that's kind of the custom when they greet. He begins to tell her that, you think maybe she's surprised the way he approached her, but he begins to cry and begins to weep. And he tells her, I'm related to you. I'm your relatives that went to the promised land. Rebecca is my mother, your aunt. So she knew where he's from. So again, it's a celebration of a reuniting of a family. Families that have never met. These two siblings, not siblings, but relatives, cousins or whatever, have never met before. But again, as you'll see, she was very, very beautiful. And when she hears the news about them being related, she hurries back to her father and tells Laban. Every time I think of Laban, I just remember the last time, like Rebecca told him, I found this guy that has gave me this gold nose ring, or whatever it was, and he went and hurried to him. You know why he hurried to him? We saw a glimpse of his personality. He's like, oh, he gave you that gold ring? Let me go help him out. He's got to have more. So Laban, as you will see today, he's a very conniving type person. And it even gets worse, because when people are like that, it doesn't matter if you're related. It doesn't matter any of that thing. It's all about themselves. So upon hearing this, Laban runs to greet his nephew. And that brings us to verse 14. So when he meets him, Laban said to him, actually the little time has passed, he said, Laban said to him, you are my own flesh and blood. Man, this sounds like, man, this guy really cares for him. You're my own flesh and blood, after Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month. So a month has passed. So Laban comes up to him and says, we're related. We're flesh and blood. And Laban said to him, just because you're a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be. Think about that. If someone told you, what should I pay you? Man, this is a great uncle, man. I was like, I need an uncle like that. Sounds great, doesn't it? But there's more to the story. Isn't it amazing when you first approach them? Some people they have that silver tongue. You have to be very careful. As we'll see, the real Laban will be revealed later. So apparently this whole time, this whole month that Jacob's been, in essence, he should be a guest. He's been working very hard. And I believe Laban takes notice. And we know also God said he was going to bless him, right? So even in everything he's doing, I'm sure God is blessing his work. And we'll see as we go through Genesis that God does multiply everything that he's doing. So Laban takes notice of that. But Jacob also knows that he needs to stay there longer than a month, doesn't he? He knows it's going to take a while for his brother Esau to get over what he's done to him. So again, I've got to make my uncle like me. I got to get out there and work. Remember, this is the mama's boy. He's used to working in the kitchen. I'm sure the first couple days, weeks, he's got blisters. He's not even sure what they are, but he knows they hurt. And after a while, he continues to work. But he also wants to impress someone else. Don't you think so? Rachel. She's got to see that that I'm worth, that I'm attracted to her, and she'll know that I'm not just a bum. So Laban makes him an offer. He makes it sound very enticing. The way he puts it, he says, I'm going to pay you this much. He makes it enticing by saying, tell me what I should pay you. Well, if you ask me, I'm worth a lot of money. Give me $50 an hour. I know it sounds like a lot, but I'm worth it. What we see is Laban has a slick tongue, which he uses to deceive people. So he's kind of set up the stage, kind of set the stage where Jacob's guard is let down. He's feeling comfortable. He's thinking, my uncle really cares for me. So let's see what happens next in verse 16. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah. Now this is very important in this story. Leah is the oldest, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Now, I don't understand what this means. It says Leah had weak eyes. There's many different guesses of what it means. She couldn't see well. She didn't look, I don't know. There was many different ones, and none of them really made sense to me. She had weak eyes. Can you guys Tell me what that means. If you look at a girl or a guy and says, he's got weak eyes. I have no idea what that means. Some say she had blue eyes. And the customary eyes of that culture was dark brown eyes. So they would look at blue eyes as not a positive thing. Unattractive for some reason. I don't know why. They didn't say she had ugly eyes. She had weak eyes. I don't know. Anyway, we'll go on. We probably don't want to repeat this on live. But Tim Hess is your name, right? Tim Hess said her eyes were cross-eyed. So again, all these, no one has a clue. So we'll just move on. But this part we do know. It says, but Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful. And we know Rachel was beautiful. Jacob, here's the key though. It says, Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I will work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter Rachel. Again, the key word is younger. Laban said, now listen, when I hear Laban speak, I want to throw up because I just hear this guy that's conniving. Listen to his words. He says, it is better that I give her to you than some other man. Stay here with me. He's like, you're related to me. It's better anyway that I would give her to you. So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel. But listen to this, ladies. This is the guy you want. But they seemed only like a few days to him because of his love for her. Yeah, I cried a little bit when I read that too. I was like, wow, that is awesome. But they should. I better stop there. So Jacob already knew what he wanted. He was in love with Rachel probably from the first time he saw her. That was why he was telling, hey, you guys might want to go ahead and water your sheep and go home. He says, I'll serve you 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage. What in essence, I was thinking, 7 years is a long time. But what we really see in this culture, usually when you ask the father for the daughter's hand, you have to have a dowry. In essence, this 7 years is going to be that dowry. His service to him is for that dowry. But again, 7 years is probably far more generous offer than he would have expected. But Jacob, that's how much he loved her. He didn't want to have the chance that he would refuse. When Laban saw, listen to this. Now, Laban sees in this statement how badly Jacob wants Rachel. So what does that tell conniving Laban? I can take advantage of this guy. And he does. Now I want to give you a quote from John Corson that I believe really sums up a lot of this. He says, Jacob worked 7 years, and that seemed but a few days, because love is patient. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, he quotes from there, but he says, love gives. Now here's a really, all joking aside, if you look at this is what men and women should be looking for in future spouses. Love gives. Lust takes. Love waits. Lust won't. Love is patient. Lust is pressure. Lust says now. Love says no. So there's a world of difference between love and lust. And men, women both nowadays, they promote that. It's love when it's actually just lust. If it's truly love, you're willing to wait and do it according to God's will. Within the marriage. Anything else outside of the marriage is against God's will. And I know, well, even her with my own family, there's how they move in together. Don't move in together. You may think, hey, it's a test drive. If you go to secular, if you can go to secular, they do the study and see that if they move in together, there's a higher percentage of likability that they will get divorced. So don't do it. With that, we'll move on to Genesis 29, verse 21. Then Jacob said to Laban, now remember, 7 years have passed. I love the way he says it. Give me my wife. Man, this dude is patient. 7 years up, he's like, okay, 7 years is done, give me my wife. My time is complete, and I want to lie with her. So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. Now, continue to listen to his and watch his actions. You really think he's doing the honorable thing. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob. Oh, I thought it was supposed to be someone else. And Jacob lay with her. And Laban gave his servant girl Zilpah to his daughter as a maidservant. When morning came, there was Leah. How'd that happen? So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" So now we see what you reap, what you sow is what you reap. So he's reaping deception by his own uncle as he deceived his father. So every time Laban, the trickster, Jacob asks for something, he seems to be humble and agree to it right away. It's like, yeah, I'll fulfill my promise. He didn't actually say Rachel's name, but he threw this big feast, this big, huge celebration. But Jacob soon realizes that he's been played by his very own uncle. I mean, it's bad enough for someone to play you, but your uncle that's supposed to trust them, that should have the best out for you. Now, the question is, okay, maybe this was part Jacob's fault, because how in the world does he not know that it's Leah instead of Rachel? Sounds impossible, right? She's got weak eyes. How can you miss the weak eyes? It was possible for Jacob to be fooled because of the wedding customs of that day. According to the customs of the wife, they would be veiled, they'd be totally covered. And they were not alone until they were in the honeymoon suite. And if it was dark by that time, and when they're together, which Laban orchestrated. Could you see Jacob saying, we need to go back. I'm done partying. I want to go with my wife. And he's like, no, hold on a little bit. We're going to celebrate more. You have all your life. Don't worry about it. So he waits, and it gets dark. How is Laban going to answer this? Because Jacob says, how can you deceive me like this? How is he going to explain it without incriminating himself? Again, that sounds impossible, doesn't it? Now, when you know someone that has this skill, this is a skill set. There are some people that can lie to you straight to your face, and you know it's a lie and make you believe it. I had one guy do that to me. I was thinking, I know that's not the truth, but that sure sounds like the truth. Or I know you're lying, but I think it sounds like the truth. This is what's going on. Listen to what happens next. It's really intriguing here. Verse 26. Laban replied, this guy's just cool and calm the whole time. It is not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Really? You could have told me that 7 years ago. Like, I thought you knew. Can you see that? Listen to what he tells him. Finish this daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one also. And in return for another 7 years of work. And Jacob did so. Man, you think you got some bad in-laws, man. Look at this one. Outlaws or whatever they're called. He said, he finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his servant girl Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maidservant. Jacob lay with Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. So Laban, here's my kind of interpretation. Laban's talking and says, okay, Jacob, you're like a son to me. I feel bad how things have turned out. You're thinking, dude, you're the one that did it. But he's staying on really thick. I feel really bad how these things turned out. I really thought you knew. That's why I didn't tell you the whole time that you were going to have to get Leah first. So I'm going to give you Rachel in marriage, but here's what I'm going to do. After the wedding week, because their weddings would last for a week. Can you imagine that? A whole week eating and just having a good time together. After the week, marriage week is over, you can have Rachel as your wife. But you have to work for me for 7 years. So he's enticing him by saying, okay, I know he already knows how desperate he wants her because he's totally in love with her. So he works it and says, okay, another 7 years. So he gets Jacob for another 7 years. Now we look at Laban. Laban is a perfect picture of a deceptive manipulator. We see them today. He ended up getting exactly what he wanted. Check this out. He wanted both of his daughters married. Accomplished. But see, in the end, this was a father treating his daughters badly. Because as you're going to see, he knows. If you knew a man did not love your daughter, would you encourage them to marry them? No, you wouldn't. He knows that Jacob loves Rachel. But yet, he tricks Jacob. Because who is it about? It's about himself. He's willing to use his own children for his own benefit. We even see that today, don't we? The one peoples that kids shouldn't have to worry about is their own parents. They should be the ones that do anything, lay their own life down for their kids. We would, wouldn't you? We would lay our lives down for our kids. But look at this. When you're wicked, the links you go through to prosper. So we see that in the end, it would turn out badly both for himself and his daughters. Laban doesn't win like he thinks he's going to. And to get ahead of ourselves, we know Jacob ends up leaving. But many times, God judges manipulators by giving them what they want. Turning them over to their own sinful desires and methods they want. But allowing them to be a loss for them. He allows you, because many times when you do these sins, he allows it to happen. They will pay the price, or I should say the consequences. They're not even looking at those things. They're just looking at what they're going to get right now. But God knows the consequences. Now, this chapter's been entitled, You Reap What You Sow, but actually the next few verses really breaks off into a different subject. When we look at verses 31 to 35, I'm going to entitle this section, Loved by God. Because what we see now, Leah is not loved by her husband. She knows it. Rachel knows it. Jacob knows it. Everyone around knows that Jacob doesn't love her. Can you imagine being in that type of relationship? Being married for a week, then your sister marries your husband. That's altogether messed up to think about, having more than one wife. But in that culture, it was okay, but it doesn't mean it's okay. Even from the beginning of the Genesis, we know that's not right. And to be in a relationship where we're going to see he not only didn't love her, and in essence, he actually hated her. And we'll see from God's very words, he says he hated her, because I believe he's blaming her too. Because, well, you deceived me. But let's go on, let's read, see what happens. Verse 31. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. In some translation it says, when the Lord saw that she was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, it is because the Lord has seen my misery. Can you see a little insight into what Leah's going through? She's not happy. Not only is she not happy, she's in misery. Surely, now listen to this part. This really shows you her heart. Surely my husband will love me now. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, because the Lord has heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too. So she named him Simeon. Again she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, now at last, my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. So his name was Levi. This story sounds like a horrific life to live. But don't forget, God is involved. God has intervened here. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, this time I will praise the Lord. So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. There's a progression here. Each one of these children wanting her husband to love her. But what we see here is God's compassion on Leah by touching her. Rachel has not had any children. And again, in that culture, it's a blessing to have children. Actually, it's the woman's responsibility. And even greater, which I don't know how in the world this works, they have to have sons. I believe she was truly an innocent party in this mess. When the father sets up the marriage, they can't question it or anything. And if he told her, you don't say anything, she couldn't say anything. God can bring comfort and blessing in a relationship or to a wife, to a husband, and meet their needs even when they're not being loved in this ungodly manner. Jacob was not showing godly character. Even though he's a man that God's going to use, do you see godly character in the way he was treating her? No. So Leah gives birth to a son. She names him Reuben, which means see a son. What do you think she's saying? She's saying to Jacob, see, I've given you a son. I've given you this blessing. And it was a blessing to have a son, because God has given me favor. There's two things. First of all, I've given you some son. And secondly, I've given you a son because God has shown me favor. So there's two reasons why you should love me. And he's given me this son because you haven't loved me. But see, Leah makes a mistake. She's thinking a baby would bring her and Jacob together. How many times have you heard that story? You know, they'll have a child thinking this will bring us closer. That's not the way to do it. This has been many, many years ago, and it hasn't changed today, has it? Leah wanted to be loved by Jacob, but here's the problem. This is why more than one wife is a bad idea. Jacob already loved Rachel. He can't. Some say, well, can't he love them all? No, he's not going to love them all. One's he's going to love the most. One over the other. And even in relationships, it's the same way. You can't be dating more than one person thinking, same thing. I can equally love them. No, you can't. Jacob, even though he did not love Leah, now this part you need to listen to. It's really applicable to today. We know that Jacob didn't love Leah, right? But he was still willing. He was married to her. He was still willing to have sex with her. This demonstrates this principle that is still true, that a man will often be willing to have sex completely apart from love. They can say, I love you, because they want sex. We got adult groups, I can talk this way. They use that as a tool, and they're willing to say that. I'm sure it can go the other way. A woman can tell a guy, I love you, and just for that reason. So just because you have that sexual, intimate relationship doesn't mean that there's love involved. It could be like what I talked about at the beginning, right? Lust. Is it lust or is it love? But what does love say? It's willing to wait. If you really love me, you will. It's like, yeah, if you really love me, you will wait. Because our goal, what we need to do is please God first. First and foremost. So now we see God blesses Leah with another son, which she named Simeon. Simeon means the Lord has heard. The Lord continues to hear her suffering, her agony. Leah believes that God heard her cries, which he did, but she believes that he's given her another son that would cause Jacob to love her, seeing how Rachel had not yet had any sons. So again, she's right in that God has heard her, but she's wrong in what she thinks God is doing. And then God gives Leah a third son, which she names Levi. Levi means join. So she's thinking, this will do it, a third son. Rachel still hasn't had any sons. This will do it. Surely after giving him 3 sons, Jacob's heart will be joined to mine. So you see through her, she just wants to be loved by her husband. Sad, isn't it? Because we know that's never going to happen. Because he's already in love with someone else. So here comes the 4th son. She gives birth to another son. She names him Judah. Judah means praise. Now here's where her heart changes. All this time she's seeking and striving and wanting that love for her husband, which clear that he's not going to give it to her. She begins to see how God cares for her. And he's been providing for her. So she has another son and names him Judah, which means praise. It's appropriate if Leah is now indeed decided to draw close to the Lord. I mean, you could be in a bad relationship. You need to draw closer to the Lord. and experience his love, wisdom, direction too, of course. She sees that striving and wanting that love. And you even see it in relationship with daughters to their fathers. Many fathers are bad fathers, and mothers too. I say fathers because I think of some examples that come up to mind where a daughter just desires for that father to love her, but he refuses to do so. Or he's incapable of it. There's many things you can go into. But God loves you. You have a father that loves you. Even for us men, many men I know want their fathers to approve of them. Have you guys seen that? My older brother, from younger age, he's a carbon copy of my dad. He looks a lot like him, but he acted like him, I think, to get his approval. You know, you just want, you want that father to approve you. I mean, I'm somewhat to the point. I did some, like most sons. But some just, they don't feel fulfilled unless that father shows that approval. So we see Leah in this relationship. This is 4 sons, so this has been quite a while. So Leah thought she was neglected by Jacob, and she was despised by Rachel. Can you see how Rachel despises her too? You're married to the man that's supposed to be my husband and my husband only. And by the way, he doesn't even love you. You know, Dad tricked him. But even though she was despised, neglected by Jacob, despised by Rachel, God has a purpose for her life. He has a plan that he's going to work through her life. And this I really didn't know because I haven't read it in a while. But do you guys know but the 2 greatest tribes of Israel came from Leah, not Rachel? Levi, the priestly tribe. Judah, the royal tribe. Isn't that amazing? And not only that, most importantly, guess who came through her lineage? The Messiah came from Leah. The less attractive sister who was neglected and despised, but learned to look to the Lord and praise him. So what's the lesson here? I don't know. There's a lot of lessons, isn't there? Mine is, as I was reading this last section, is look to the Lord for your answers. Yeah, husbands should love their wives. Wives should love their husbands. Fathers, mothers should love their children. Yes, that's all true. In a perfect world, without sin, without wickedness, uncles should treat their nephews like their own children. That is definitely not true. But what we learn from Leah, we have to trust in God. God will never leave us and God will never forsake us. No matter what we do. You ever do something so bad you think God can't love you anymore? That's the enemy. Because he can't get mad at you. He knows what you're going to do before you do it. He's not like he's surprised, like, oh, wow, I didn't see that. That's the worst part, when you don't expect something like this. But God knows everything. And again, God can even work through these difficult things to do amazing things. Can you not say that God did amazing things to Leah? Look at the tribes that came through, and look, through the whole world's blessed through her. But she had to learn, as we do, to put our faith and trust in God. Now, again, relationships, we are to be helpers to each other. But remember, we're imperfect, especially when we're not serving God. Ladies, men, do not marry someone that's not a believer. If you're a Christian, don't marry them and if they're not a Christian. You're not going to change them. Now, it's possible they could, but there's also the other side, they may not. And it's a heartache. I've told you the story about my mom and dad, how some reason when she would go to church, she would run out of gas. Right before Sunday, some reason there was enough gas in the truck to get there. Many stories like that. You see that. That's God even tells you, don't be unequally yoked. And if you're dating, don't date unless you're serious, and be dating a person that knows Jesus Christ. That's where it begins. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. With that said, let's end with prayer, and we'll go into prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time. I pray, Lord, as we've read your word, and we've seen through the lives of Jacob, the many things that were done to him and that he did. And I pray, Lord, that we learn many lessons to this, and that you change us. Change us to be like you, to be able to show love, to look less at our own desires, and more at the needs of others. That everyone needs to be loved.